Sustainable Development. From 27th to 30th of April 2024,
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking about a crucial subject, which is the green hydrogen financing. There is a huge attention from the globe about investing in green hydrogen power. So today I am welcoming my guest speakers, Ms. Lucia Fusilli, Mr. Khalifa, and Mr. Khalil, and Mr. Ashik. So, Khalil, or Miss Lucy, sorry, she's an energy and sustainability expert with over 15 years of experience in clean energy, decarbonization, climate finance, and ESG. She worked with policymakers like European Union's institutes, international organizations, and development bank. She also considered to be one of the global consultants to shape sustainable infrastructure portfolios. Mr. Khalifa Sarrar, he is the head of the Office of Special Envoy of the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, supporting the Special Envoy in the fundraising effort for the initiative and contributing to the implementation of the various pillars of the Alliance. He joined the Ministry of Economy, Planning and Cooperation of Senegal in May 2019 as a technical advisor, seconded by Tony Blair Institute. Mr. Khalil Al-Fareh, is a visionary leader with over 20 years of rich experience. Currently, he's serving as a CFO for Dhahran Techno Valley Holding Company and was the vice chairman of the Global Maritime Fund. As an appointment MISC 2030 leader, so congratulations, Khalil. Committed Saudi Arabia Vision 2030, he has pioneered innovative financial strategies, achieving remarkable initial funding, around more than 2 billion Saudi riyal, oversubscribed by 5 times double. Khalil also contributes as a board member and founder across several fintech and technology startups, emphasizing sustainable growth and innovation. His strategic vision focuses on transformative approaches that enhance sustainability and organizational coherence. And lastly, Mr. Ashik. So Mr. Ashik Moayed, he is the manager, direct financing division of the Islamic Corporation for Development of the Private Sector. He is also has 2 decades of infrastructure and project financing experience in the emerging market. During this period, he has been involved with infrastructure and energy projects in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. He also Ashik with his team successfully financed solar and wind projects and hydrogen projects in different countries. Currently, he is the head of the direct financing division of ISD prior to joining ISD in 2018. So thanks for welcoming my speakers. So we will start today about why green hydrogen. I will provide you a brief introduction. Actually, the hydrogen is colorless and odorless, so the color identification is provided only to distinguish the way how it's been produced. So when we are talking about green hydrogen, we are reflecting to the hydrogen that's been produced from renewable energy source. It's been a huge investment projected in 2023, so the volume projected for green hydrogen or hydrogen in general was around 242 billion Saudi riyal, or USD dollar. And the projection till 2030 is to reach around 410 USD dollar. So to distinguish also one more point before we start with our great speakers and esteemed panels, there are the gray hydrogen, which is produced ordinary from the methane, and there is the blue hydrogen, which is being produced by steam methane reforming. Plus, we have to store some part of the carbon dioxide. So the pricing of producing gray hydrogen is landing on around $1 USD per kg. Whereas if we are talking about blue will be around 1.5, considering the storage cost for the emissed carbon. When it comes to green is crossing 5 to 6 USD dollar per kg, which is making it very, I would say, expensive. And let's see now with our speakers how we can bridge the gap and come up with a solution on how to incentivize the financial institutes and finance such a project. So maybe I will start with Ms. Lucia. How do investors assess the financial feasibility and risk associated with the green hydrogen, especially when there is no benchmark high-scale project nowadays?
Thank you for the question. So assessing the financial viability of a hydrogen product means assessing the financial viability of 4 components: a renewable energy plant, the hydrogen production station where there is the electrolyzer, the storage and local transport infrastructure for the molecule, and optional, the industrial equipment utilizing the molecule that is produced. So it is slightly more complex than normal renewables, but it has the same fundamentals. So technical and operational maturity aspects, for example, include the feasibility of delivering the output of the project in its own environment, the readiness level of the scale-up of the pilot, or even if the project is a first of a kind, reliability of the assumptions that are used for the modeling, for the financial modeling and for the technical design, implementation capacity, timeline, and the organizational structure. Financial maturity instead include the credibility of the business model, of the market assessment, because we are talking about a nascent market, credibility of the revenues and of the cost, and predictability or sensitivity of cash flow, the contractual setup, and the classic financial parameters. Now, besides these, it is also worth accounting for some specific aspects. From a technical operationalist perspective, for example, interface risk mitigation becomes very important because it's a project with multiple components, and they have to work together. And consideration must be given to dependencies from an infrastructure that is outside the project scope. For example, the jetty and the port delivery infrastructure for the molecule, for the transport of the molecule. From a financial perspective, it is worth asking, what is the level of backup from public authorities at the country, at the regional, at the municipal level? Because these projects tend to be significant at country level. They tend to be big infrastructure, and they tend to involve logistic areas, logistic nodes. So they must have the written backup of policymakers and authorities responsible for the strategic planning of this infrastructure. How the project is going to be supported in case of negative cash flow? Is there any of these public entities backing the project that could step in case of negative cash flow? And last but not least, because of the size of this project, stakeholders, local stakeholders need to be aware and need to be positive towards this project. You don't want last-minute phenomena of protest or not in my backyard attitude. Now, for climate and development finance, there are also other indicators to consider, like the level of carbon abatement that this project enabled, the cost for each ton of CO2 removed, the number of filing beneficiaries, the socioeconomic benefits, whether the finance that you're providing is additional, and if the concessionality that you're providing is appropriate and how that is passed on to the market. And then there is finally one key aspect. A lot of these projects are designed for export. So they will, in effect, contribute from a climate finance perspective to the national determined contribution of other countries. And this speaks favorably in terms of development to development financier. But in order to attract climate finance, there needs to be also country ownership, so a substantial climate and socioeconomic benefit also for the producing country at subnational level.
So I cannot agree more. When it comes to large-scale project, I would say an off-take agreement is crucial to ensure like the product can be, I would say, exported and utilized. It is one of like the main pillar for ensuring financing such a project. I will come to Mr. Khalifa. So what are the future prospects and opportunities for green hydrogen in Africa? So how do the geopolitical factors such as trade policies, energy security considerations, and international cooperation come into play for the green hydrogen opportunities in Africa?
Thank you very much, Seth, for the opportunity to participate to this panel and share an African perspective. So as we all know, Africa has a huge potential in terms of producing low-cost renewable energy. The continent has approximately 60% of the world's best solar resources, huge wind and geothermal potential. And we have noticed over the last decade a sharp decrease in solar panel costs, in wind energy prices, which means that with this trend, as the International Energy Agency said, with further declines, Africa will be able to even produce up to 5,000 megatons of green hydrogen at a cost of $2 per kilogram.
So we consider it as a great opportunity for Africa to like start hydrogen projects.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great opportunity for Africa to start in a competitive manner green hydrogen projects. Now, it's not simple because there are many other topics that need to be taken into consideration, as Lucy was mentioning. What does it mean for Africa? It has benefits for Africa in many sectors. If you think about the challenges that the continent is facing and will face in the medium and long term, first, food security. Green hydrogen means possibility to produce green ammonia, which go into fertilizer and address the yield in agriculture. Very important. If you think about industry, the continent needs to industrialize itself. We've been saying that more and more. But in a world where polluting will be more and more expensive, and in a decarbonizing world, green hydrogen is the opportunity to industrialize in a sustainable manner and in a competitive manner when you think about the future, in 2050, for example. Third, transportation. The population of Africa will reach 2.5 billion people in 2050, so 2.5 billion. And the continent, as I just said, will industrialize, which means that we will need to enable people and goods to move in a smooth manner, especially if the African continental free trade zone materializes, right? And green hydrogen is the opportunity to do it in a sustainable manner and in a competitive manner. And then lastly is job creation and foreign direct investment. By doing all of these things that I just said, you will create the sustainable job that Africa needs and also attract foreign direct investment. Now, it means that we cannot just export all of our green hydrogen without any value add, as it is currently with most of our resources, right? But on the other hand, we need to recognize that green hydrogen will be exported, a sizable portion in the short and medium term to create demand. This is where the regulation and geopolitical tension come into play, because if you look at Europe, for example, you have a growing demand for less polluting solutions with higher prices under the EU emission trade system. And when you look at initiatives such as the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, this trend will evolve and be shared across the world. And you see that with the geopolitical tension, there is a need to diversify the origin of energy, right? I don't need to give names or mention examples. Everyone knows what happened in the world over the last years. But as the president of the African Development Bank says, no one eats potential, right? There's the need to transform these potentials into actual bankable opportunities, and this is the challenge. And the last thing that I want to say is that, it's important. Green hydrogen is great, it's important, and we need to recognize it. But we also need to recognize that it's one solution and not the unique solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalifa. I think you touch base on 2 or 3 crucial points, which is, I would say, human capability readiness. So until now, till we have the maturity of green hydrogen from all aspects, production to utilization, we need to have expertise, people who can treat this and deal with it. Also, with regards to the other point about materializing the hydrogen, still there are many opportunities and places or feedstock where we can utilize the hydrogen on, especially when it comes to sustain the environment and reducing the emission. My next question to Khalil Al-Fureih. So what are the main challenges in financing a green hydrogen project, and how do these challenges differ from traditional fossil fuel-based projects?
Thank you very much. I think this is a very, very important question. And if we pause for a second, and as we all know, although hydrogen production and hydrogen demand has been there for a while, whether it's a gray, blue, or even green, green energy in specific is still taking baby steps as a maturity when we compare it to traditional fossil fuel. So if we were to pick an overarching challenge, I would say, the lack of track record to be one of the key challenges. And then if we try to take that overarching challenge and break it down into 3 sub-challenges, I would start by higher funding cost to be one of the key challenges. Green hydrogen production primarily through electrolysis, so it requires a substantial upfront investment compared to the mature fossil fuel. So, these advanced technologies compared to fossil fuel are too expensive and requires a lot of liquidity upfront. So this is the first challenge. The second one is technological risk. Given that it's a new technology, it comes with an inherent risk of potential technological challenges. Okay, this immaturity brings higher technological risk, as I said, including potentially lower efficiencies and potential reliability issues, which can turn off key investors and financiers if you go to the capital market. So it's another big challenge. The third one that I would like to highlight today is the infrastructural complexity. Given, again, the maturity level of the hydrogen or green hydrogen, to be specific, lots of investors and players in the energy market, they try to do small bits and pieces, which increases the doubt of the success of such projects. So it creates some sort of natural entry barrier where you need almost to invest on establishing a complete infrastructure from production, storage to transportation. So it makes it a capital intensive kind of investment. So that's my third challenge that we need to be really aware of.
Thank you, Khalil. I would like to highlight one important thing you talked about, which is the efficiency of the electrolyzer. As of today, maybe the maximum efficiency of electrolyzer is not more than 60%. And if you are considering, for example, in generating a 2 gigawatt project, that means we are not getting, I would say, we are getting almost less than 1 gigawatt for the electrolysis. So there is a huge losses. And this is one of the things which is making the green hydrogen production more expensive. Maybe one more point you talked about when we talk about storage. So far, storing hydrogen can be done in many forms, one of which is transforming it to ammonia by adding nitrogen, which will make it liquid. And we are while dealing with the liquid, it's easier than dealing with the gas. However, in the value chain, once we export the ammonia, we need to make disassociation and downstream process again in order to remove the nitrogen and having the hydrogen again. So this is also, I would say, one of which the bottleneck is there. That's making the cost of green hydrogen, I would say, above or almost more than the gray by 5 times. My next question to Mr. Mohammed Ashik. We would like to know the main differences that can be noticed between green hydrogen project finance and traditional, I would say, infrastructure projects.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Very, very pleased to be as part of this very distinguished panel. Thanks for that question. Look, I mean, to start with, we don't have a lot of track record, but it's super exciting to look at the evolution of the green hydrogen project. It is relatively the dedicated electrolyzer-based standalone green hydrogen projects are still, I would say, a little bit novel. So there is the whole industry and the bankers side by side will learn more and more about it and start to get comfortable. The way it would differ from what we normally do is if we're looking at a power generation project, everybody has done a lot of power generation project. You produce electricity through some sort of a well-established technology, you put it on the grid, and you have in most cases, a reliable offtake from the state utility or the regional utility who are credible or backstopped by the state. So that's pretty straightforward, a well-established model. And most of the banks have done a lot of refinery and petrochemicals project. So they're also very familiar with the ammonia, ethane cracking, and so on and so forth. The due diligence is basically on the market of petroleum, on the market study of the polypropylenes and benzenes and paraxylene and so on. So you've got all these well-established protocols. Here, what we're talking about, producing a commodity, which is not traded, which has a big usage today. Today, globally, 95 million metric tons of hydrogen is used. But where is it used in? 41 million metric ton of that annually is used by the refinery sector. About half of that is pretty sticky because those hydrogen, about half of the hydrogen from the refinery sector is byproduct hydrogen. So they're gonna have it anyway and they're gonna use it. The remaining half is produced mostly burning fossil fuel. Those are the ones that can be improved and there could be a shift. The other one is the 53 million metric ton out of the 95 of global demand today is used by the industries, mostly by the ammonia industry. So ammonia requires a whole bunch of hydrogen, and the ammonia industry pretty much eats up 30 million metric ton per annum. So that's the segment everybody's getting very excited about and wants to replace with green hydrogen as best as possible. And then you've got the methanol industry that consumes something like 15 million metric ton, and then you've got iron DRI, the steel making process, they take about 5-6 million metric ton. So that's the current demand spectrum. The way the world looks at 2030, there will need to be a lot of new demand. So if we are looking at a project of hydrogen making through electrolysis, and the project is sponsored by an existing user, then it becomes pretty straightforward. We'd go and do a due diligence on the existing user. It's on site, and it can be used up. The due diligence becomes very standard template. If we are producing hydrogen to sell it to someone, then there needs to be a very reliable, bankable offtake arrangement, which was the case for the NEOM project. The whole feature of that project is this fantastic offtake by a A-rated entity who happens to be one of the largest merchant hydrogen supplier. So it really depends on connecting the dots and having the whole loop and finding a way to run a due diligence that makes sense. What will happen, though, is at least my expectation is same thing that happened with solar and wind. The cost of technology will start to plummet over time. The reliability will start to climb up. Efficiency, as you rightly pointed out, will start to climb up sharply. Give you one example. On electrolysis, today, the dedicated electrolysis capacity is just 2.5 gigawatt. The manufacturers are saying that they can actually produce something like 14 gigawatt worth of electrolyzers today, although the actual production is a lot less. What we need by 2030 to keep pace with the net zero target by 2050 is to have 155 gigawatt worth of electrolyzer manufacturing capacity. So there are a lot of things going on. So in green hydrogen financing, you've got a lot of moving parts going around, and it becomes very, very viable if you have an on-site off-taker, if you're selling it in the form of hydrogen. As Mustafa, you rightly pointed out, that it's not very practical to carry hydrogen in its true form. So you've got to, either you'll need to keep it in a super compressed, super cold vessel, which becomes very costly, or you got to turn it into ammonia. And if you turn it into ammonia, then you have to, at some point, reverse it back to electricity, or use it as ammonia and make urea fertilizer and whatnot. So it really is not standardized yet. It depends on circumstances, where, who's doing the project, do they have an internal usage or not. So it's got a whole mosaic of various moving items. But good thing is the fundamental tenets of the technology is pretty straightforward. It's just putting the blocks together. That's where the creativity comes in of the sponsors. And the last thing I'll say is also that one interesting observation is that it forced the multiple, very different industries to collaborate and form joint ventures. If we look at the NEOM project, it's going to produce about a little north of 200,000 tons of green hydrogen per annum. It had to pull together the landowner NEOM. It had to pull together Aquapower as the world's leading renewable energy and energy company, and also the Air Product, which is the champion on the hydrogen side, and ThyssenKrupp, who does this electrolyzer and those kind of solutions. And last one fun fact is the prototype project on which the electrolyzer will be built. The current pilot is 100 times smaller. So the actual project is going to be 100 times larger. So that tells you something how fast the technology is moving. But it should work. And so there are challenges, but at the same time, like everything associated to new technology, it's going to be quite exciting, and there are enough tailwind to make it happen. So I think there are a lot of positives.
Thank you, Mr. Ashik, for this fruitful, I would say, and detailed answer. Maybe I would like to add more points to what you have just said. NEOM Green Hydrogen project or company, I would say its main pillar of success is the offtake agreement, which is a 30 years offtake agreement. So we couldn't see any large-scale project to benchmark this size, which consists of around 2.5 or 2.4 gigawatt of solar, along with 1.6 gigawatt of wind power, alongside with 400 mega battery energy storage system, all together to power up an electrolyzer unit that will produce 2.2 gigawatt. So that's massive, and the project is a visionary project. It is a noble project. It's the largest scale all over the world so far. So as you mentioned, it's around production capacity will be 6.5 ton a day. So making it annual around 200. So my next question to Lucia. So when it comes to providing insights onto the potential revenues, streams and business models associated with the green hydrogen project. As of now, we know there are still few applications and utilizations for hydrogen, which creating a demand one of, I would say, a difficult and crucial pillar. So how can we incentivize the market and make it more, I would say, reliable and I would say scalable for all?
The secret, I would say, especially in a nascent market like this, is diversification of revenues. So in general, what we have learned, especially what Ashik has already clarified, hydrogen can complement what electrification can't decarbonize. So he mentioned already e-fuels to be utilized in the chemical industries or as fuels. He mentioned ammonia. Green hydrogen could be utilized as fuel for heavy transport like trucks and possibly trains. Long-term storage and transport of energy. And it is utilized in several industrial processes like steel making and iron productions, or other industries such as food for the production of hydrogenated oil, flat glass, semiconductors,
so
medical.
Here, when it comes, for example, with a new terminology where we can mention green steel or green cement.
Exactly, green steel and greening certain energy-heavy process, heavy emitting sectors. And for all these end uses, pilots are either already built, like the case of e-methanol, or are underway. So it is technically possible and it's being developed and implemented. However, the market is nascent. So it's good if one single project can have several revenue lines and feed several offtake agreements, because when one industry is down, another one can complement and maintain the project afloat. And that's also where integration with industrial clusters and industrial districts come to play. This is, integration with clusters and integration with transport nodes is not just an opportunity, it is essential, because it facilitates this diversification, it facilitates market making, and it facilitates capacity building, beyond, of course, being logistically convenient. And when it comes to integration, there is also to note that as of 2023, turbines running with 100% hydrogen have been already tested in lab. Turbines running with hydrogen as primary fuel are currently being developed, and current average are between 5% and 30%. And even pipelines, once they are retrofitted, they can transport a mix of up to 40% hydrogen. So when it comes to integration in existing infrastructure, just to spread the revenue further geographically, all of this opens up an entire new chapter, whereby you can retrofit potentially in a foreseeable future gas power plants and pipelines because now it is at least technically feasible. Of course, how much this is going to be cost competitive and bankable would be a matter of demand and market development timelines. But as we heard from Ashek, the timelines of maturity of this market are pretty rapid. So we will see at a certain point even retrofit of plants coming up and becoming an additional line of revenue and applicability for hydrogen.
So here I would like also to highlight Saudi Arabia. We are aiming to be the largest hub of renewable energy all over the world to import or export green energy to the whole world. So this will be done through massive interconnection of grid. So I would say maybe I would like to highlight there is ongoing interconnection with Egypt, and as Prince Minister of Energy highlighted, there will be new connection with Jordan, Iraq, Turkey, Greek, and India. So by making this connection with them, providing them, powering the world with the green energy, we are aiming to be the largest energy hub, connecting all the three, I would say, big, Asia, Africa, and Europe. So, Mr. Khalifa, my question to you is about if we can have the role of government in incentivizing, subsidizing, and having, I would say, frameworks in financing and investment of a green hydrogen or a green investment project.
Thank you, Mustafa. I think I will start with where you ended when you were talking about Saudi Arabia. I think the first point is really to have a clear vision and a clear strategy. You know, in Africa, for example, we know that many countries have huge potential to produce green hydrogen and huge potential to produce simply renewable energy. But very few of them actually assess how much green hydrogen they can produce based on their renewable energy resources, and even if it is feasible. So you have few countries that have started, right, like Egypt, Morocco, Namibia, etc. But a country needs to know with the renewable energy it has, how much green hydrogen potentially it can produce, taking into consideration other challenges such as access to water and the supporting infrastructure. And based on this assessment, it's important to have a clear hydrogen roadmap development. The market is a challenge, as Rusha and Ashek were saying, right? So you need to be able either to identify your market as soon as now, or to have a clear strategy to build your market with the various uses. So for me, number one is to make your assessment and to have a clear roadmap that will identify the projects, the incentives, the reforms, the clusters, the requirements for the private sector to invest into green hydrogen, right? So that's number one. Number two is enabling environment. These projects cost billions of dollars. So no investor will come into your country just because you're nice and you have renewable energy. You need to provide them with a good regulatory and robust regulatory framework, robust PPP framework, ease of doing business. This is important for them to strive in your country in this kind of project, but it's also important to reduce the perception of risk and ultimately the cost of capital. As I said, these projects cost billions of dollars. And still in the enabling environment, you need to provide very smooth processes to obtain land and permitting licenses. These projects may have several components, and each component may need a license or a permit. So you may even have a green hydrogen one-stop shop where investors can go and get all the permits that they need, and it will give them comfort that the project will be done at time without too much contingency. So enabling environment. Number three is really about incentives and de-risking. There is a tension on the revenue stream. So the government, when they can do it, needs to provide investors with certainty, or not really 100% certainty, otherwise it's not a PPP anymore, but at least some visibility on the revenue stream. It can be offtake guarantee in transportation or willingness to pay for the green premium when we talk about green steel. It can be carbon credit, or it can be carbon and emission taxes that will make the green solution competitive compared to conventional solution. Now, of course, when we talk about Africa, we need to think about the local context. So each country may choose the option based on the local context. Number 4 is really the competitiveness. If you think about what is driving up the cost of hydrogen, it's CapEx, right? I mean, government cannot do much about it except perhaps economy of scale or fostering R&D, but where government can have impact is really on the cost of renewable energy. And here I think we can be bold. If there is players that are willing to invest into green hydrogen, government should enable them to have access to a preferred tariff for renewable electricity in order to decrease the cost, right? And we also need to be competitive, having the right infrastructure such as port, airport, rail, access to water that is needed to make a green hydrogen project very competitive. And then lastly, subsidies. It's challenging for African countries, at least many of them, because they face several challenges in health, security, energy, etc. But still, when possible, providing subsidies under a PPP scheme with the opportunity to share profits if they are above a certain target could make green hydrogen projects bankable and good for the likes of Ashek to finance. Thank you.
Thanks for your great insight, Khalifa. I would like also maybe to highlight we have a program here in Saudi Arabia per Ministry of Energy for the circular economy of carbon trade and incentivizing the, I would say, hydrogen in general. So the aim of this program is to create a balance and to make a demand. So as of today, the main issue for it is the demand. So once this has been incentivized, I would say it will provide the private sector clear strategic, I would say, vision about what kind of investment on how it can be processed. My question to Khalil, if you can provide us from your experience about a life example about green financing or any lesson learned where we can share it with our audience today.
Okay, that's a very good question. I think I can speak about recent experience in my prior job where I was leading the establishment of one-of-a-kind maritime fund. It's an EU-based fund that started just to fulfill a single order book for a number of ships, and then it grows to become a major enabler to the maritime industry in Saudi, with a potential of $10 billion of AUM. The initial ticket size was oversubscribed when we did the initial market sounding by 5 times. So there's a strong appetite of we really work hard on establishing our bankable projects. So that fund brought 3 key value propositions. The first one, it provided competitive financing because we really worked on, what was highlighted earlier by my colleagues, partnering with the right off-takers and enhancing the bankability of the transaction. The second one is fit for purpose. So the way we structure the fund is where, it's sliced between, debt and capital and where we've selected, the right jurisdiction strategically to allow for flexibility. So the initial structure that we set up, within 10 to 15 business days, we can reverse engineer it, slice and dice the capital structure, and relaunch a new subcompartment for the next client. So it gives these three key competitive advantages. So it was developed to be a ring-fenced structure, and one of the most complex challenges that we accomplished is we really worked hard on structuring the fund to maintain the right level of control and avoiding any consolidation, because we wanted to be a standalone entity that serves not only a single company but the whole ecosystem in Saudi. So in terms of key takeaways, I would like to highlight three ones that we really need to work hard to enhance the bankability of our green project, whether it's hydrogen or any other project. The first one is strategic alignment. We need to make sure that my project strategy in line with my company strategy, in line with the industry strategy, in line, if we're in Saudi, with Vision 2030, and in line with the global direction. So this is the first important lesson learned. Second one is to partner with the right strategic partnerships. Unfortunately, some of the traps, some of the projects falls into, immediately they wear the hat of customer-supplier relationship and looking for short-term wins, which is not sustainable. So you really, when it comes to green hydrogen or green energy, you need to wear the hat of where can I find win-win? And just being mindful of the time of the session here, or I can speak about an example where we struck almost 30 years offtake agreement with one of the key players in Saudi. The third one, and to me is the most key ones, and majority of us have done executive programs with prestigious universities globally, but there is one lesson I learned personally from my father, and I think it's applicable to our professional life, where he said, no matter what you do in life, small or big, put forward good intention. Our presence here in life is very temporary. Inshallah, I wish everyone long-lasting life. But we need to make sure that our business decisions are sustainable, that will help our kids, grandchildren, and for the generation to come. So as my father said, whatever you do, small or big, make sure you bring forward good intention, and you will see wonders. Thank you.
Thanks for your insight, Khalil. Maybe I would like to highlight also, as per his minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, Minister of Energy, he said, we are doing this transition toward green and clean energy to save and to care about our planet. So, this is one of the golden takeaway why Saudi Arabia, we are leading this transition. When it comes now to Mr. Ashik, so what do you think the role of ISDB Bank Group in green project financing? What is the consideration for the upcoming years? I would say when it comes to what kind of opportunities, growth we can consider.
Thanks for that question. Look, I think for us, the way we actually, everything that we do fundamentally is to support member countries. So a good point to start for us is to see how this kind of links to our member countries. So when we look at our membership, few of the true champions in this industry are already in our member countries and progressively going to be in our member country, be it in the area of standalone green hydrogen production. The NEOM project is the largest, the 220,000 tons of green hydrogen over here in Saudi Arabia. And if you look at the scale of that project, the 2 gigawatt electrolyzer, the current maximum size electrolyzer that operates today is in China, 260 megawatts. So this is 2,000 megawatts, so close to 8 times larger. So Saudi Arabia, as you already highlighted, Mustafa, that is really moving very fast, putting a lot of investment, not just on the projects, but also on the corridors, both over here, also in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and so on, to create a whole ecosystem for green hydrogen-related transportation and handling. And then we have a whole range of other member countries. UAE. UAE wants to reach up to 1.4 million tons of green hydrogen production by 2030. They have 1 million from green, the remaining 400,000 by capturing carbon from the production and putting it back into the storage underground. So UAE has ambitious plans, and they've just started putting up some pilot hydrogen refueling for vehicles and so on. And then moving further east, Indonesia. Indonesia is cost-wise and potential-wise is a big place for green hydrogen. So there are at least one project brought in Aqua Power in partnership with PLN and local sponsors to put up a similar size to the NEOM green hydrogen project over there. And then there is another one which just 50,000 tons per annum just got commercially operational recently. That's a PLN project called Nusantara. So Indonesia is moving fast on that. Saudi Arabia definitely is already well progressed. Then you have got Uzbekistan. So Uzbekistan just did a small pilot project in a place called Chirchik, and it's an EBRD finance project. And now World Bank has appointed, I think, Arup as the consultant to do a full study feasibility in Uzbekistan to identify the potential, scoping, and the roadmap. Then in our own backyard in the Middle East, Oman is moving very fast with the Duqm project with Scatec Solar and so on, and with their Indian partner. So that project is moving on with a decent capacity. Jordan is looking at a couple of projects at least. So we've got Oman, Jordan, UAE, Saudi Arabia. Egypt is a massive place for green hydrogen. In Egypt, Aqua Power just moved on with the $4 billion of project over there, and that will have the similar type of capacity as the one in NEOM. And overall, Egypt, because of also their location and the tremendous renewable energy potential, their plan is really to go up to roughly 5% of the imports that EU have intention to get from other countries. By the way, EU has declared a program where for the next 10 years, any onshore hydrogen production, they're going to give a certain amount. It's to be determined. The cap is €4.5 per kg, but it is auction-based, so it could be lower for domestic producers for next 10 years. And they've allocated 10 million tons of import as well. So Egypt is really eyeing that. Morocco is another place where a lot of action is going on green hydrogen. Also Mauritania. Mauritania has been one of the largest destinations with CWP Global and so on, and the Total Eren project over there. So they're looking at really like $45 billion of at least early feasibility, but if things moves forward, it's a massive amount of. Pakistan attracted Emirati investments for a pretty sizable green hydrogen project. So overall, it seems a lot of our member countries are really moving on with this. With member countries moving on, we will move on with the member countries for sure. And I'm sure that's true for most of the development banks. Still, we don't have a standard template. So that's the difference between doing this project versus doing a petrochemical project versus doing an ammonia project or doing a power project, be it thermal, be it renewable or whatever, or doing a transmission distribution project. That's the fundamental difference. We don't have a template. Each project is novel and boutique. So we'll take a boutique approach. That's what we are here for as development banks, and until such time it becomes more and more standardized.
Thank you, Ashik. I totally agree, and I second you. Like, NEOM Green Hydrogen project so far is the largest. Financial closure was around $8.5 billion USD. And you have highlighted more than 10 countries from ISD will be participating. And for sure, this will be, I would say, a huge share to take from, I would say, this business model market. My last question to Lucia, it's how can we bridge the gap and have the knowledge between financiers and project developers? Because it appears like there are a huge, I would say, gap so far, and that's regular because still, as of today, there is no benchmark to have like the full spectrum of a project, of green hydrogen project, where the financial institute can have the pattern, the structure, and they build the financial technicality on. So
I'm really glad actually that Ashik mentioned about the standards, because that was actually my first point. I mean, first of all, this community of stakeholders needs a lingua franca. And COP28 declaration of intent on hydrogen and derivatives and the new ISO standard that has been just launched, they are foundational step in that direction. We need standards, harmonization, safety, interoperability, mutual recognition of certification. All of these are key to avoid market fragmentation and to promote investor confidence, to promote those benchmarks that you were talking about. And in parallel, all financiers and decision makers need to be brought at the same table with the developers. So they start picking up the language and acknowledge each other's needs and ambition, with technical people being present at the conversation, establishing, moderating, establishing the boundaries of what's technically possible or not. And financiers are gradually picking up the expertise required to assess hydrogen projects. In that sense, there needs to be some knowledge sharing towards financiers, either through the dialogue or through market intelligence aggregators. So success cases must be circulated. And the European Commission does this in a very clever way with the Innovation Fund, which is the fund of the Commission that finances all types of innovative clean energy and decarbonization technology. So what she does, each year the Commission appoints a number of senior professionals with technical and banking background as expert evaluators, and they make them assess project proposal for the fund. And this is done through individual assessment and through consensus meetings. So these people are brought at the same table and they start speaking together. And this is very useful because beyond the assessment, it helps creating a consensus on methodologies, shared methodologies within the community of practitioners. And in the future, those evaluators and experts, they become the very advisor to similar projects that apply to climate finance or to private finance. So at the same time, also these consensus meetings are also a way for the decision maker, for the policy maker, to collect feedback. Is my policy effective? Is my market making effective? My market making efforts are having a success. How can we better scale up these technologies? So I would say bridging the capacity gap, multi-stakeholder dialogue, standards, and consensus-based assessment of pilot applying for government-backed financing.
Thank you, Lucia. With regards to policies, I would like to highlight now in Saudi Arabia, in CABSARC, we launched the first, I would say, policy school, which will be the great start for having our, I would say, local, I would say, standards, policies, and regulation as we are moving toward diversifying many, I would say, type of investment. In conclusion, I would like to thank my, I would say, all speakers, Lucia, Khalil, Khalifa, and Mr. Ashik, and thanks for the audience. There are two questions, actually. Let's have the question.
Yeah, thank you very much for this great panel. My question to Mr. Ashik, with regards to ICD innovative financing within the member states, how you guys are looking at this, and also the financing with regards to Sharia compliant for this green initiative, given that ESG in the same direction of Sharia compliant. So I wonder, you know, if you can shed some light on your organization contribution toward green financing or green hydrogen financing, or, you know, the perspective.
So from ICD, as part of the Islamic Development Bank Group, there is a sort of substantive part, which is the sector, where the money is going, and the modality. Those things are always, without any question, those are core tenets of how we intervene into any project, whether it's beneficial, obviously anything that's good for the planet and the country and the people, obviously that's beneficial, similar to this project. And in terms of structuring also, it's compliant with the Sharia principle in terms of how the financing is structured. Those are also fully adhered, and there is independence of those checks and balances. As far as this type of the climate change projects are concerned, we've got, we do a lot of renewable energy projects. So we've done projects in Jordan, Pakistan, we've done in Egypt, and that portfolio continues to grow. Now we're trying to put more focus also on some of the other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. From the group, there's been over and above ICD. Oh, the other thing we're doing is also we're looking at a lot of manufacturing companies who are using thermal power, but they can replace that with common sense renewable energy plant. And some of these industrial units are very large. They consume a lot of electricity. So right now we have in our deals pipeline a number of deals that are captive to be used by industrial units, and they will replace the thermal sources or the grid connection, or at least complement that with in-house. So we're doing quite a few of those. Even on the thermal space, what we have seen is interesting things are happening. For example, there was a project we signed earlier this year, but that turbine, the technology provider assures that that turbine can operate with 50% hydrogen mix. And if you look at the new General Electric plants, they are already quite up there with a mix of hydrogen and traditional fuel, and they're getting to a level where it could be fired with full hydrogen. So those are also elements that we pay attention to, those potentials.
Thank you, Ashik. So I think we are concluding because there is a plan for another session. Thanks again for my speakers. Thanks for the audience, and thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, everyone. Thank you. Please remain on stage because we would like to take a group photo. We would like to have a group photo. Please remain on stage. Yes, we would like to document this important moment and this amazing session. Thank you to all of our speakers and also to our moderator, Mr. Mustafa Al-Hakim. And please receive this gift. We will actually receive it after the photo. So, yes. تفضلوا بقبول هذه الهدية التذكارية تقديراً لمشاركة.
Kindly, you are requested to accept this present for your excellent participation.
Let's give them another big round of applause, everyone. شكرا جزيلا. شكرا لكم. حضورنا الكريم، لقاءنا سيتجدد.
We are going to resume after this short break. I will be here at 2:30. Thank you very much.
نحن نخدم الإنسانية